Hi, I'm Ann Magro. I'm Senior Associate Dean for Strategy and Impact in the School of Business here at George Mason University. And thank you for joining us today. We're really excited about this session on leveraging partnerships for the global goals. And for those of you who know the UN Global Goals, you'll recognize that as Global Goal 17. We have two terrific examples to share with you today of the power of partnership with the Smithsonian Mason School of Conservation and the Business for a Better World Center's Honeybee Initiative that's located in the School of Business. But before I introduce our panelists, I want to acknowledge that George Mason University sits on land stolen from the indigenous peoples of the Americas. No words can rectify the wrongs imposed upon those who inhabited this land prior to settler colonization, but still we acknowledge the first peoples of Virginia to honor and preserve their histories, and we stand in solidarity with them. Today we honor the Pamunkey, Chickahominy, Eastern Chickahominy, Upper Mattaponi, Rappahannock, Nansemond, and Monacan peoples, the original peoples of our region. So our first presenters will be Cody Edwards and Robert Barrett from the Smithsonian Mason School of Conservation. Cody joins us in his role as Executive Director of the school, and he's joined by Robert, who serves as the school's Assistant Director of Recruitment and Outreach. So I'll turn the mic over to them.
Well, first of all, thanks, Ann. It's a pleasure to be here. And it's really terrific to talk about, the partnership we have with the Smithsonian, and to answer any questions that everybody might have towards the end. And this is a unique partnership. I mean, again, I have a series of words that I almost shudder to use, innovative, unique. I mean, it seems like that those are words that everybody uses, but the fact of the matter is that the Smithsonian, is an entity that is, it's a global brand, a true global brand. And if you look at the Smithsonian, they have a lot of partnerships, but with institutes of higher education. But they're usually just one-off programs. They're not academic programs where credit is being offered. A lot of what they have are at the graduate level, and they are fellowship programs and things like that. So it's really things set up by their scientists with colleagues at other institutions. So, in point of fact, this relationship is one of a kind. It's the only relationship that the Smithsonian has with an institute of higher education where there is a physical program embedded within one of the Smithsonian sites. So it's a really cool program, and there's a lot of excitement around it. Robert, I'll turn it over to him in just a bit, and to talk, about specifics, and to show you some really cool video that was made. I think it was a year ago, maybe a little less than a year ago. But again, happy to talk and answer questions after Robert gives his presentation. So again, welcome, and thank you so much for attending.
All right, thank you very much. I'm actually going to start off by sharing my screen and showing some presentation slides with a bit of a prologue for just a moment here to explain, hopefully you can see that in full view, to explain why I chose this photo for the title page. We have a lot of really, really beautiful and captivating visual content to show you in the next little while. But I thought that the street signs showing conservation really illustrates a couple of things, obviously intersectionality, and definitely the way that most people here at the Smithsonian Mason School of Conservation think of it as very interdisciplinary. So we're going to talk a little bit about how we do that collaboration and partner. You can tell by the name of our organization, the Smithsonian Mason School of Conservation, that it is itself a partnership, but within the programs that we offer, you'll see a lot of other instances of collaboration and partnerships across organizations within the Smithsonian itself. So to introduce myself, I'm Robert Barrett. Cody and I have talked a lot about this subject with a lot of groups, and we're just very comfortable kind of chiming in if there's information that he wants to share, and he knows that. So you will hear from both of us today. But to give you a little bit of geographical context, what you're looking at here is an aerial view of the Smithsonian Conservation Biology Institute, or SCBI, one of the many acronyms we're going to throw at you today. We love our acronyms. So this is SCBI. SCBI is technically part of the National Zoo. Most people know the Smithsonian's National Zoo as the downtown Washington, D.C. facility that is usually, most of the time, open to the public. It's a wonderful, enriching educational facility. Some people view it as a tourist attraction. Well, that facility has a sister campus, which is located about, on a good day, about an hour and a half west of DC. I think it's about 75 or so miles. It's right on the border of the Shenandoah National Park in a town called Front Royal, Virginia. And that is known as the Smithsonian Conservation Biology Institute. It's actually quite different from the downtown Washington, DC branch in that it's much, much larger. Downtown DC, they have about, I think, 160 or 70 acres. We have 3,200, so 3,200 acres out here at SCBI. And another big difference is that it is closed to the public. So it's not one of the Smithsonian facilities that people can just drive up to and show up and take a tour and see the different organizations that operate out of here. So it's different in a couple of regards. One of the main purposes of the facility is to breed and study animals that are endangered, threatened, or in some cases even extinct in the wild. So there are a lot of operations that run out of SCBI focused on environmental conservation and ecology, such as the Center for Conservation and Sustainability, the Center for Conservation Genomics, the Species Survival Center, the Smithsonian's Migratory Bird Center is here, and Virginia Working Landscapes, and a few others. And within the midst of all of that is the Smithsonian Mason School of Conservation, or SMSC. So the SMSC campus has the Volcano Academic Center, which you're looking at on the slide here, which houses our labs and classrooms where students, and I'll tell you a little bit more about the programs that we offer, where students meet with each other, again, in the classrooms and labs. There is a fully functioning residence hall here because many of our programs that we offer to students are residential in nature. And then across from that, in sort of a little triangular fashion, is a dining hall. And so students can live out here, they can dine out here, they can take their coursework out here. They can do field work in the on-site. I mentioned 3,200 acres, so there are plenty of pastures, streams, forests, ponds where students can actually go out and collect samples and do other kinds of data collection. So we really offer a range of programs for a lot of different kinds of students. But to highlight the partnership before I get into those, I'll tell you a little bit about the Smithsonian Institution's purpose and vision and how that relates to Mason's mission, so that you can see that there are really strong parallels that make us ripe for partnership. The Smithsonian's purpose, very simply, the increase and diffusion of knowledge. And the vision, by next year, they'll build upon unique strengths to engage and to inspire more people where they are with greater impact, while catalyzing critical conversation on issues affecting our nation and the world. Now let's take a look at George Mason University's current mission. Obviously, many of you know, it's a public comprehensive research university in the state of Virginia. Committed to creating a more just, free, and prosperous world. Core institutional characteristics include innovation, Cody mentioned that at the very beginning, diversity, entrepreneurship, and accessibility. I'll draw your attention now to the fourth core institutional characteristic down there, partnering with public and private organizations in our community, in our region, and around the world, which is, as you know, very much what the Smithsonian does. And so that is definitely one of the backbones of our partnerships, because we do exhibit a lot of parallels that make us a good combination. I mentioned a moment ago that we have a lot of offerings for students interested in the pursuit of conservation, either academically or for their careers, or hopefully both. We offer programs for high school students all the way up to PhD and postdocs, people who have all the degrees they're ever going to earn, and they're already in the midst of their careers. But what I wanted to focus on today is the partnership in our undergraduate programs. So we have 3 semester-long undergraduate programs that last the duration of an entire fall or spring semester. We offer 2 at a time. So if you can kind of do the math there, we offer 3, but 2 at a time. They sort of rotate throughout the academic year. And the reason why I'm focusing on those, even though we can definitely address any questions that you have about the high school programs, the graduate and professional offerings, even some of our summer courses, is because those really do show a lot of really rich examples of partnership within them. So this is a unique opportunity to chat about an organization which itself is a partnership, right? The Smithsonian Mason School of Conservation, but within that, we certainly exploit a lot of different partnerships that make us realize that we definitely couldn't do this alone. So we'll talk a little bit about that now. I never wanted to bog anybody down with a lot of details about the programs because they are definitely out there on our web. So I thought I would start off by showing you, get my mouse to move over there, a very quick, I think it's about a minute long video that shows kind of a typical day in the life of our students. So I'll click play now. Start it over, maybe a head nod if you can hear it. No? Okay. Sorry if you couldn't hear that. I think there was some, excuse me, audio, but I decided to leave it running anyway because it was a minute long and it shows you some pretty compelling graphics of what the students get to do, like I said, on a typical day. So again, apologies for not being able to hear it. The URL was down there, and if you have access to the slides, I encourage you to go ahead and check out our YouTube channel and a few other videos that we have out there as well. So I do want to tell you a little bit about the 3 undergraduate semester away programs because they illustrate our partnership so well. You can see a photo on the screen right now of some of our undergraduate students engaged in one of our fall or spring semester away programs called Conservation, Biodiversity, and Society. Now, this is the one that deals a lot with the human aspect of conservation. So students study things like climate change, watershed management, zoo management, human wildlife interaction, and sustainability, but they do that all through the lens of somebody who is actually going out and doing field work and speaking to farmers about the issues that they're facing, speaking to landowners about decisions involving watershed management. I think that the students in this photo right here on a sustainable farm in Rappahannock County that we're visiting could probably deal with 4 out of 5 of the topics there on the left-hand side of the slide here, just by going to one field visit. So these are partnerships that really keep our programs exciting on a day-to-day basis. Students, I think, are very pleasantly surprised when they take our programs to find that the balance of classroom versus lab work, field work, and offsite excursions is kind of tipped a little away from the classroom time, and it gives them more of a chance to go out and explore what it's like to be in the field and interacting with a lot of different people. This program is also unique in that it contains a 1-day-a-week job practicum. So another layer of partnerships here once a week. And with this particular program, Conservation, Biodiversity, and Society, it happens on a Monday where the students don't have class, but instead they spend every Monday for the entire semester meeting with a conservation practitioner. Students are placed with them to get real work experience. Now, some of the examples are the Blue Ridge Wildlife and Rehabilitation Center we have in a nearby area of the state of Virginia up here. Can be on site with some of our animal keepers, with other organizations who are off-site, like the Shenandoah River State Park, just up the road from us. There's a museum in Winchester, Virginia, that had a couple of students help them design and build a bird exhibit last semester, which is excellent for students who want to get into that field of education and outreach. So it's definitely something that adds a lot. You sort of get, it sounds kind of sales pitchy, but you get that in addition to what you get in the classroom and in the lab and in the field. You get the work experience too, which is a very nice addition. And then of course, as you can probably deduce, you get a really cool built-in networking opportunity, right? And so this person that you're working for throughout the duration of the semester is presumably somebody who could write a letter of recommendation for you, who could serve as a reference if you wanted to get another job or to maybe go to grad school, somebody who can vouch for the quality of work that you're doing in the legitimate area of conservation. The other two programs that we have are a little bit different, but they're sort of similar to each other. And so I clumped them together in this slide here. A fall-only program that focuses on wildlife and a spring-only program that focuses on endangered species. We're obviously running that one right now. So we have endangered species conservation students here. Now, this one is different from the other program because it does not contain that job practicum. Sorry, these two. Don't contain that job practicum I talked about a moment ago, but instead they contain a 5-week extensive research experience reserved for the end of the semester. Now, this is a really impressive and cool opportunity for students who are going on into careers or perhaps to grad school or want to apply for some sort of research position somewhere while they're in school, to get direct experience working with a Smithsonian scientist or some sort of affiliate on actual research that they're doing. And I emphasize that because to differentiate from, somebody who might come up with a student-friendly research project or something like, a busy work activity or something to give students a sense of what it might be like to do research in the real world, but what the students are actually doing for the final 5 weeks of either the fall or the spring semester is working full-time. So 32, 36, or even up to 40 hours for those last 5 weeks. Actual research that the Smithsonian or affiliate is working on at that time. It could be something that they need more assistance with. It could be maybe a sort of an offshoot of research that they don't feel like they can get to right away, but they want the student to take that over. And that is really great for the students. Again, you get that additional experience on top of what you're already getting in the semester program day to day for the first part of the semester. But you also get that built-in networking opportunity. So that is somebody who can vouch for your research skills, somebody who might be able to serve as a reference or write a letter of recommendation. So really wonderful opportunities for a variety of reasons. Students can apply what they've learned during that first part of the curriculum, or during days that they're not on the job practicum, they can apply that. They can gain longer term work experience, network with other conservation practitioners or researchers. And I think maybe what would have been most important for myself is to decide, if I liked the work, to be able to actually get out and do it. A lot of times I think students may not really know what it feels like to be in the lab and what it feels like to go through data, because they just sort of talk about it and read about it. But this gives them that actual experience, and to find out that you don't like something is really just as valuable as to find out that you do like doing it. And finally, very briefly, Note about another layer of partnerships that we have at the Smithsonian Mason School of Conservation. We do admit students from any institution into our programs. So into our undergraduate semester programs that I went over, we could admit students from Mason or from outside of the Mason community, but we also have something a little bit tighter than that with a select number of other institutions, a few of which are in the state of Virginia, and the one that you're looking at on the slide right here, Wilson College, is not. That's in the state of Pennsylvania, but actually fairly close to where we are up here. And so are able to accept students from these partner institutions. By the way, the other ones include Mary Washington, Bridgewater College, Sweetbriar College, and I think we're also in the final stages of James Madison University. Those are all in the state of Virginia. But we can work with these institutions, and the way that we execute this partnership is with a memorandum of understanding, just a sample that you're looking at right here. And so it goes through different ways that we can accept students without having to have them apply. We will enroll them on their behalf. And so there are definite advantages to the partner institutions that we have. And then there's language in there that, you know, says they can use the logo on certain things. And so it kind of goes both ways. It's a bit of a symbiotic relationship with that, with partner schools in particular. But again, we could admit students into our programs from any institution. It's just nice to have this kind of legal or formal aspect to it for other schools that want to take advantage of certain benefits of being a partner. So those are all the slides that I have for you right now. And I know that Cody and I are both happy to talk to you more about other things that I got to or didn't get to that I alluded to. If you have any questions, and we have some other presenters right after this as well.
We can take a minute here to answer any questions if anybody in the audience would like to ask any right now. You can either raise your hand using the Zoom function, or I think we're a small enough crowd that if you just want to unmute yourself and speak, we can do it that way as well. Or you can put a note into the chat saying that you have a question. I'll give you just a minute to figure that out in case there are any questions.
And also we have our email addresses there too. And I know both of us are happy to work with you. If you have questions that maybe don't pop up right now and come to you later, feel free to jot that down.
I'll also just comment, you know, on a couple of things that Robert said. You know, it's leveraging these partnerships to address, you know, some of the SDGs, and certainly, I mean, the partnership we have with the Smithsonian, it's multi-layered too, and so it involves scientists and graduate students, and so there's all this really cool work that Robert didn't really touch on that that sort of addresses the SDG on even another level, right? So it's these, you know, breaking apart these complex problems piece by piece, and then for a broader solution. And so that goes on as well, not just at this site, but this is a global program. We've had, you know, potentially any of the Smithsonian sites around the world. You know, we can have students go there. Another thing that Robert was touching on was, you know, for these undergraduates, it's a truly experiential, you know, course and set of courses for them. But a lot of these students, they go on to graduate school and work for these very same researchers. And so yes, it's cool. They get to do, you know, these really cool projects. A couple of these things, the projects, you know, they publish, you know, manuscripts on these in peer-to-peer publications in various journals. But many times, you know, they go to sort of the front of the line. These students do because it's sort of a tryout, right? They interact with these scientists, and if they do a good job, you know, usually if they want to go to grad school, the scientists will say, hey, you should think about working for me as a master's student or PhD students. Happen many, many times. And again, fellowships at the Smithsonian and you know, any kind of work experience is very difficult to get. And so they usually let our students go to the front of that line too. So, so it's, again, there's a lot of layers there. And then we didn't even go into the dozens of partner institutions that we have, you know, some of the world's largest conservation related NGOs, Conservation International, World Wildlife Fund. That's the kind of organizations I'm talking about. Well, it's nice because being a friend of the Smithsonian sort of opens these doors for you as well. And so, at Mason, we've translated that into a lot of different partnerships at the research level or the policy level that now go beyond SMSC. So I think it's now starting to sort of flower into a lot of areas, and including the next phase of this is going to be heavily focused on environmental justice. And so that's the newest thing that we're working on. And we have some really interesting partners that I think we'll be able to talk about in the coming weeks. So a lot going on. Again, we just touched on a little bit of it, but these partnerships, the last thing I'll say is they must be managed. That once you establish a partnership, it's not like you just say, oh, that's done. It's not, it's going to continue on and it's going to bear fruit. Mm-hmm. There is a lot of work to maintain partnerships, especially with institutions that are, the Smithsonian calls themselves a forever institution. And I think they're probably right. If the Smithsonian ever goes belly up, we're probably all in big trouble. So anyway, if you have questions, again, you can ask us. I think at the end, Anne, is there another period of time that we'll have questions?
Yeah. I think we'll go ahead and let the next presenters go, and then at the end we'll have some time. And I'd really love to come back. One of my questions that I was going to put to you really was about that. How do you manage relationships, right? How do you manage the partnership? So I think probably both the sets of presenters will have something to say about that.
Wonderful. Thank you.
So our next presenters are Germán Perea and Lisa Green-Pemble. Germán is the co-founder and director of the Honeybee Initiative. He's joined by Lisa, who's co-founder and director of strategy for the Honeybee Initiative. And Lisa also serves as the director of global impact and engagement in the business school and is co-executive director of the Business for a Better World Center. So I'll let you guys take it over.
I should start from the beginning.
Very good place to start.
That's a good place to start. So welcome to our presentation on the Honeybee Initiative, which is part of the Business for a Better World Center at the School of Business at George Mason University. And I'm going to go ahead and start with, I hope this video plays. If it doesn't and there's no sound, let me know.
Yes.
Okay.
I'm here today in Fairfax, Virginia with Germán Perea. He is the director of the George Mason University Honeybee Initiative. And as you can see, we're at our teaching hive locations. And I wanted to ask you a few questions about bees. Like, how many bee species are there in the US and globally?
There are about 20,000 species of bees. In the United States, we have about 4,000. And the highest diversity is found in Yuma, Arizona, where they have over 1,200 species of bees.
And what's so great about Yuma, Arizona?
That's interesting because most of the bees, or where you find the highest diversity of bees in the world, is in the deserts. The other place where you find a huge diversity of bees is in Carmel, Israel. That's the highest diversity of bees in the world.
And is it because they're ground nesting bees?
That's the ground nesting bees.
I think we know, but why are bees so important for the planet, especially now?
The planet as we know it, all the flowers, all the trees are product of pollinators. That's why they are so important, because they are the producers of primary producers. If we don't have pollinators, we won't have carnivores, we won't have any of the animals that we know and take for granted. So this is the basis of life in the planet. That's why they are so important. Honeybees are extremely important pollinators. Why? Because we have them in boxes and we can transport those boxes wherever we need them to pollinate. Mm-hmm. 1/3 of the food that we eat is actually pollinated by honeybees. In the United States, the economic worth is $15 billion per year. In the world, it's about $570 billion per year. They affect every part of the food. It is not only fruits, it is also, for example, meat, because whatever cows eat, the alfalfa and everything is pollinated by bees. So it has a very important effect on food security in the planet.
Thus, it's important to create biodiversity pockets of plants like you see here and create these spaces that both honeybees and native bees can use and thrive and prosper.
What you just said is something that is very, very important. When you use bees for pollination, you take them to a single crop. And when they get to a single crop, they only have one type of diet. For an example, the almond industry in the United States requires, at this moment, 1.5 million colonies. We have in the whole country 2,600,000 bees, so that's actually more than half of the bees that we have in this country. When you take those bees to pollinate almonds, the only thing that they have to eat is almond pollen, almond nectar. In addition to that, you have a big problem because the people that cultivate the almonds have to take care of the almonds, and they use insecticides, fungicides, fertilizers, water, and so on and so forth. And in the 90s, we have these new insecticides that are called neonicotinoids. They are extremely effective because those are systemic poisons. Systemic means that they go into the plant. And if they go into the plant, they are expressed in the pollen and nectar that is the food that bees eat. They will bring that food into the colony, and eventually the concentration gets to a point that it causes a damage in the brain of the bees. And they forget basically where they live. So they go to work and they never return. And this phenomenon appeared in 2006, and it is called colony collapse disorder. And that colony collapse disorder is not only due to neonicotinoids and insecticides, it has to do with small hive beetles, it has to do with varroa mites, it has to do with all the diseases that bees have, it has to do with the mono diet that they have, it has to do with the artificial diet that we provide to the bees. So it is a series of factors that will add up. At this moment, as we talk, we are losing about 45% of the bees, Apis mellifera bees, and whatever happens to Apis mellifera happens to the 4,000 species of bees that we have in the country.
That are native.
And that is actually damaging the food security that we have. That's very important for us to get conscious and do something to prevent the collapse of pollinators, because our next pandemic is going to be hunger. And it is going to be hunger because we are not going to have a healthy population of pollinators.
Okay, so it's going to take me a second. I had to do something a little bit different there. Let me just go back to this presentation and play from current slide. The video really answered a lot about why bees, but just to kind of highlight some of those reasons. The first reason that we focus on bees, quite frankly, is because they really connect to every single one of the Sustainable Development Goals. And so the UN Global Goals are the foundation of the Honeybee Initiative. And the second reason is that it offers a model for how to address global goals by illustrating how higher education can effectively partner across sectors and across disciplines in order to solve this challenge. And the third is the one that Herman touched on in the video, which is that if bees don't survive, we don't survive. Why is that? As he said, bees pollinate 1 in every 3 bites of food that we eat. A quick visual is pretty illustrative. You can see on the top what our stores look like with bees, and you can see on the bottom what our stores look like without bees in them. Some people are really surprised to find out that the lack of bees affects our dairy choices as well, but that's because bees pollinate clover and alfalfa, and those are the foods that our milk-producing animals eat. And so without bees, we're facing more than a 50% reduction in milk products. And so for a whole host of reasons that the video touched on, like colony collapse disorder, invasive mites, neonicotinoids, honeybees are disappearing at an alarming rate. And so we at Mason wanted to do something about that. And so in 2013, we started our Honeybee Initiative. And we have a wide variety oh, wait, before I get there, I did want to show this slide. This slide shows the acceptable loss of bees and the winter and the annual loss. And as you can see, it has not gone down. It has only gone up and been really serious over the past few years. So what did we decide to do about it? We decided that we were going to do some research. And so a lot of the research that we would do has to do with pollen quality and what else do we do? I'm so sorry, I just lost my train of thought. But we're working on pollen quality. We're working on queen rearing and making queens, and we're doing work on drone congregation. And so you can see in these photos some of our work with our College of Science colleagues doing research on bees. We also have quite a few courses, from courses on the Amazon to courses on sustainable beekeeping to integrating the Honeybee Initiative in our business and society course in the School of Business, in our marketing courses, College of Education, really all over the university. This has become a program that pretty much every discipline and college uses at some point, whether it's through our nutrition students cooking with honey, or our engineering students doing smart hive hackathons. Really, you name it. There's a role for every discipline in the Honeybee Initiative. And even that bottom photo on the bottom left is called The Living Hive, and it was with an art teacher in the College of Visual and Performing Arts. And so she made a mold, and then the bees decorated the mold because the molds were placed in the hives, and the bees kind of put their stamp on the molds. And then that mold traveled up and down the East Coast, called the Living Hive exhibition, and really educated people about what was happening in the world of bees, which is really quite serious, as you just heard. Probably the most important thing to mention is that we learned a long time ago that the work that we do will not be successful unless we are working in tandem with other people. And so these are some of the groups that we work with, not only here in the United States, but abroad. I'm going to touch on a couple of the partnerships domestically, and then I'm going to turn it over to Germán Peria, who is going to talk about our international programs. Perhaps one of our best known and more thriving program is the work that we're doing with the Covanta landfill. And here we're rehabilitating a landfill and turning it into a pollinator-friendly habitat. Also educating school groups about not only issues with landfill, but also issues with pollination. And this site has become a source of research around the presence of chemicals and heavy metals and the extent to which they exist in pollen. We also work with an organization called MVLE, and you can see Germán here working with one of the clients in this organization. The organization serves individuals with physical and mental challenges, and we do not have enough people on our campus to make the candles that we sell in our store. So MVLE clients, particularly before COVID, were manufacturing candles for us. So we hope to resume that post-COVID. On the left, you can see that we've partnered with Sodexo on campus, those as our dining service provider, and they've used our honey to make salad dressings and all sorts of goodies that are served alongside the microgreens grown in our greenhouses in the dining halls. On the right, you can see our Patriots 57 Honey Pale Ale. So it is a beer that is made with Mason honey. And finally, we most recently partnered with the Manassas Regional Airport because we needed more space for our hives. And so we expanded with the airport. And you can see photos here of students helping to erect a fence around, because we need a fence to keep out the bears, believe it or not. So this is an electric fence to keep out the bears, and the students are working on that. And now I'm going to turn this over to my colleague Germán. So Germán, take it away.
Thank you, Lisa. So I am Germán Perilla, Director of the Honeybee Initiative. And it is very important for us to actually put the programs into action. So how do we do that? We actually follow 3 principles. We use the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, that is our North or navigation card. We use community-driven development. That means that the community is the one that leads the program. And very, very important, we have tripartite alliances. This is local governments, communities, and the private sector. Without the tripartite alliances, none of this will be possible. So what do? We work in the tropics, specifically in Colombia and Peru, and we use apis bees. Over there, you know that the apis bees that we use are the Africanized bees. Those bees are very aggressive. So we had issues. Can you go to the previous one, Lisa? So we had issues. We want to have an impact in communities with children and women. So we were able actually to work with stingless bees. The nest that you see there is a very tiny bee that is particular to the tropics. I'm going to show you here. It is a few millimeters. That is Tetragonisca angostula. And we use that bee for the program in women and children. Why? Because these are stingless bees. They produce very little honey, but that honey is very, very expensive. Next. No, we are going, okay. We have another one from Colombia. Go to next. Okay. So this is where we work in Colombia. That's the map of Colombia. You see Santander in there. And whatever you have in red, that's the communities where we are present at this moment. We began the project over there in 2017 with 3 communities and 20 participants. At this moment, we have 12 municipalities and 219 participants, plus 4 schools. Next. Okay, so this is what we were talking about. The stingless bees, the meliponas. You see the nest, and you actually see the meliponary in here, and that is dedicated to kids, women, and children. It's very important because we are able to work in the schools. We are able to educate these kids on conservation. We are able to educate these kids on business. We are able to educate these kids in hygiene and so many other aspects that is very important. And for the women, especially rural women, are like a third sector in those rural communities. So what we want to do is to empower those women and make them part of the productive system of their communities. Next. So this is the beekeeping program. Again, we work with the Africanized bees. That is a long story. Those bees were introduced in the 50s and they are extremely defensive. So that presented a problem for the women to work over there because they have to be absent from home and they created problem. That's why they work with stingless bees, but actually anyone is welcome to the beekeeping program. And if you see the lower right picture, it is the way they used to have beekeeping. And if you see on the left in the middle, that's what we want to propose. So there is a change in culture. That change in culture, we don't touch the culture of the people per se, but we actually need to establish a system. And we have to demonstrate that what we are teaching is better for them, is better for the bees, is better for conservation, and it is more practical and more productive. So what we do is actually we give each of the participants in the program 3 of those hives. We don't ask them to do anything with their hives. They can continue working with them as they wish, but the hives that we give them, they have to work them as we say. And the interesting part is that then we compare production. And so far, we are winning because our method is the one that's being adopted in the communities. So that's a very successful program over there. Next. That's the video. This is an example of work we do over there in the tribe.
Un grupo de estudiantes y 2 docentes de diferentes países llegaron a Santander para conocer los proyectos apícolas de Bees for Peace, que con el liderazgo y aporte financiero de BBVA y el apoyo técnico de la Universidad Industrial de Santander se están implementando. Y es que en la zona rural de los municipios de la provincia comunera, que integran Socorro, Confines y Palmas de Socorro tradicionalmente, las abejas son las que marcan la economía regional. Por eso, desde Virginia, Estados Unidos, donde está ubicada la Universidad George Mason, de donde es este grupo, llegaron a una de las fincas de la región y entre el humo que se usa para calmar a las abejas y con la indumentaria apropiada, conocieron las colmenas de las apis, o mejor conocidas como africanizadas. Y a pesar de su escaso español, improvisaron un saludo durante la presentación del proyecto.
Nosotros llamamos a nuestra Universidad Mason. Gracias por su hospitalidad. Nos sentimos honrados de estar hoy con ustedes.
Por eso el director del programa, Germán Perilla, un biólogo colombiano especialista en abejas y docente de esta institución, explica el objetivo de la iniciativa.
Tiene 2 aspectos importantes. Uno es el empoderamiento de las comunidades y especialmente de la mujer. Es absolutamente primordial que eso ocurra. Y la otra parte es la sostenibilidad del proyecto desde el punto de vista apícola y desde el punto de vista económico. Es crear empresa, pero crear empresa desde un punto o desde un aspecto puramente social.
Durante la clase magistral que se realizó en la vereda La Cumbre, los estudiantes conocieron en detalle las colmenas y saborearon sus frutos. Por eso su balance del viaje es el mejor.
Bueno, mis expectativas antes del viaje eran conocer la región y ver cómo podíamos vincularnos con la Universidad de la UIS, la comunidad y pues lógicamente con el BBVA para crear una relación. No nos imaginamos, no me imaginé que íbamos a ver tanto y a conocer tanto. El programa hasta el momento ha sido de nuestro agrado, ha sobrepasado nuestras expectativas.
Y porque han visto que en Colombia estos proyectos permiten a la mujer empoderarse.
La primera colmena se montó el 15 de agosto del año 2017, la segunda se montó el 13 de octubre del 2017 y la tercera se montó el 16 de diciembre del año 2017. Actualmente las 3 colmenas están en desarrollo, van en segunda cámara de alza y se mantienen en proceso.
Y en el caso del Socorro, unir a sus órganos de gobierno y sector privado con la academia.
Un proyecto donde se articulan tal vez yo creo que por primera vez en el Socorro una entidad bancaria, una entidad universitaria nacional y pública, una entidad universitaria pública internacional como es la George Mason University y de igual manera 3 municipios que estamos siendo beneficiados.
La comunidad es algo muy importante para todos en las instituciones que nosotros tenemos en estos momentos ejerciendo el liderazgo de ellas en el municipio del Socorro, en el municipio de Palmas del Socorro, en el municipio de Confines. Por esto, apoyar este importante sector apícola de la región se va a convertir en uno de los escenarios alternativos de desarrollo, no solo para los municipios que hemos comentado, sino también para la región, para el departamento y para nuestro país.
Okay, so this is an example of very dynamic partnerships. As you can see, you see the private industry, you see the local government, and you also see the community plus the international students. Another program that is absolutely fascinating is the one that we have in Peru. We work in the Peruvian Amazon, near the Tahuayo River. So the Amazon is under threat at this moment. It is a huge area. If it were a country, it would be the 5th largest country in the world. And where you see the arrow is where our action is. Next. Next. Okay, so what do we find over there is destructive harvesting. Over there we use other types of bees. Those are called melliponas. They are a little bigger, very similar to apis, but also are stingless bees. Those stingless bees actually make some pads like this. That's where they store the honey and store the pollen. And I show you this because the structure of the nest is completely different. If you see here, it's basically like pancakes, one on top of the other. And as you can see here, it is the destructive harvesting. They have to chop down the tree, they open the tree, they destroy the nest. And the product that they collect is something that is not marketable at all. Next. So the idea is to change that behavior into something that is sustainable, something that is profitable, something that actually helps the communities to empower themselves economically and politically. So they bring the nest from the jungle, and over here you actually see the partnerships in action. We have the students, we have the community in full, and we bring the equipment, we build equipment, including everyone, the kids, the teachers, the women, the men, everyone participates because it is important that they know what they are doing, one thing, and it is important that they learn how to replicate the program. Everything that we do over here, they have to be able to do over there. Otherwise, it doesn't have any validity. So that's what we do. Or on this picture, you see the whole community and the end work of what we produce. Those are the hives for the Mellipona bees, and you can see actually the honey that we produce. What is important about this program, they make more money producing honey than chopping down the jungle. And the only way, in my opinion, that we can conserve the Amazon is by keeping the people that live in the Amazon healthy and happy. If they migrate from the Amazon, that will disappear very soon. So that's the partnerships that we implement. That's the beekeeping program in action. And that's how bees, besides all the benefits that Lisa explained, actually contribute to alleviate poverty and empower communities, not only in these two countries, but throughout the world. Next. There's a little video that explains the program over there in the Amazon.
Germán Perilla.
Bueno, yo me llamo Teresa.
Ben Tian.
Jorge Soplín Ortiz.
In 2012 was the first time that I came down. We taught beekeeping and we spent 3.5 weeks down here. And I always wanted to be able to offer that opportunity to students at Champlain.
Y por ahora pues, es muy importante el programa para hacerles estudiar a los muchachos, a los niños, a los hijos, a las hijas.
The honey is part of it's just like one cog in a much bigger wheel. I had no idea that was the case. I figured honey is honey out here, and it's not.
from the conversations that we have, we know that people are interested in expanding beekeeping here.
Para la gente es importante tener una colmena.
Bueno, donde no me dio de mi parte, yo quisiera tener aunque sea 10, 20 cajones de esto. Lo que queremos nosotros es un poquito más de apoyo para poder nosotros también seguir adelante con este clima.
Bees are absolutely crucial for human subsistence. The Amazon is absolutely crucial for human subsistence. So the connection is there.
Yo no pienso que se va, que no pienso ahí de, digamos, eliminarlo, porque es una cosa que me gusta tener.
When you're supporting the bee project, you're not necessarily just like sending supplies to make beehives.
It goes far beyond the bees, even though that's where we begin.
To me, it is kind of a mission that I adopted in my life to try to do something to preserve the Amazon.
Okay, so that's our Honeybee Initiative program in action.
Cool.
If you have questions, I will love to.
Cool.
Thank you so much, Lisa and Herman. If anyone has questions, feel free to put them in the chat or note in the chat that you have a question. In the meantime, and this is a sort of a question to the whole panel, can you tell us just a little bit more about how you develop the relationships with your partners? It's a very different set of partners for each project, but I'm sure each of them had unique aspects of forming those partnerships.
I mean, I can jump in and start. It's a lot of conversations and a lot of continued conversations. So with our domestic partners here, a lot of times people are reaching out to talk to us directly, and it just, like any relationship, it requires a significant amount of care, particularly when we're doing this, in my case, not in Herman's in Colombia, but it's cross-cultural. So keeping in mind different communication styles, different expectations, different ways of living, different everything, and putting that in the foreground of our conversations. So I would say it's a lot of relationship building.
In the case of the communities, it's a little complex because it's a completely different environment, completely different people. And in order to be effective, you have to go through a process of friendship and mutual trust until you have to get to a point that I call you have to become invisible for the community. That means that they accept you as one of them. At that moment, you can have actual influence over the community. If you don't have the trust and you don't have the confidence and they don't have it on you, you don't have any success.
I think you also have to have a champion on the other, within the partner institution, because without that, it's very difficult to make inroads. I mean, there's only so much top-down, relationship building that can occur, but you have to have at least a champion, if not champions. If it's a larger and deeper partnership, then you need multiple people at probably different levels. But I think that's the most difficult thing with the Smithsonian, is that people come and go just like they do in higher ed. So making certain that you've always got somebody as passionate as you as a partner, it's helpful.
So the Smithsonian obviously could pretty much partner with anybody, right? So how did this partnership come to be?
Yeah, as it turns out, I wish I had some, this actually, I mean, I was at Mason at the time, but wasn't really affiliated with. There was no school. The school itself is about 10 years old, roughly. But the relationship that led to the school, there was a lot of iterations in between. It dates back to really the early 2000s. I guess you maybe could say the late 1990s. But Steve Monfort, who is the director of the National Zoo, he was a PhD. He got his PhD from George Mason. And so he was, he had relationships with people at Mason. And so really he was that first domino that fell. So he wanted to have students out at SCBI. they started bringing some students out, started doing some programming, and from there it sort of just, it morphed into more formal. But it really took over 10 years to arrive at the point where both sides said, okay, we should do something incredibly formal and form this partnership. But that was it. I mean, it was incremental steps is the way that we got to this. Without Steve involved in this, my guess is there would be no SMSC. I mean, it was actually good fortune. There were several Ivy League schools that we have colleagues there, and they were trying to do this very thing since the early 90s. So a bit of good fortune on our case, and we've been a terrific partner to them, no question about it.
Well, so those of us who have infant, partnerships in their infancy should not beat ourselves up too much if we don't yet have a formal relationship like this with conservation.
Yeah, I mean, it took, again, it's over a decade, over a decade of these just tiny little changes.
Yeah. I mean, to both of you, for people who are thinking about trying to form partnerships to work together, and you've talked about relationships, you've talked about managing them. Is there any other piece of advice that you would give?
Yeah, keep the mission of what you're trying to do first and foremost, because I think it's really easy to get pulled off track by other people who are doing really cool things, and you're like, oh, well, we could do that. But we could do that is not the same thing as your mission and our mission are aligned, and there's a mutual benefit there for that. So I really think making sure that you are true to who you are and what your mission and vision are is extremely important.
Yeah, I agree with that. I also think that you've got to brace yourself, because it's like anything, any kind of relationship, it's going to have it's like a roller coaster, right? So it's got peaks and valleys. And when you're riding high, everybody loves it, it gets lots of attention, but there's going to be those valleys too. And you've got to work through it. I mean, it's and that's where I think everything that Lisa and Armand has said, earlier about, really having this relationship and working together and building trust, that's where all of that really pays off. Because if you don't have that, the first sign of trouble, especially, again, like the Smithsonian, you said it, and they can partner with anyone. And so certainly you're going to have people saying, I told you they couldn't pull this off. Let's go with an Ivy League school or something. But you've got to have that relationship, that trust and communication built up to prevent anything like that from happening. But there's going to be bad times that you've got to push through.
Yeah, and as you mentioned, I mean, you have to be the good partner, right? I mean, you have to hold up your end of the deal, right?
That's right.
Yeah. So anytime you're in a partnership, including relationships, and we keep going back to the personal relationships analogy, sometimes relationships need to end. So, have you had the situation where, obviously you're still partnered with the Smithsonian, but you have a lot of other partners. Have you had situations where you needed to end a partnership, and how do you handle that?
Well, I mean, obviously we, again, with the Smithsonian, we've never gotten close to that point, but I think there's certainly been, universities that were, Robert mentioned earlier that we have some of these partner universities that send their students here, and back at the partner university, they usually have they usually set up a unique, some kind of pathway to their existing programs where the credits transfer over. And so we've had a couple of instances where, again, for various reasons, some of them not problematic, where people were angry, but we had to say, listen, it's not really working out. And so let's just, go our separate ways, and maybe at some point in time we revisit it. So that certainly happened. This happened a couple of times.
Mm-hmm. How about you, Lisa and Herman? Have you had to sever a relationship with a partner? I'm guessing from the smile, the answer is
yes. Do you want to talk about it, Herman, or do you want me to? Sure, that's a really easy question. Yeah, we've had to, and I mean, it's a difficult conversation. I mean, with a couple of individuals, organizations. It was a little bit challenging because it involved other constituents and other partners too. And so I think the way that we handled it was to be as upfront and respectful as possible, and not to burn any bridges, recognizing that we may end up wanting to partner or seeing an opportunity in the future. So I would just say a combination of gentleness and honesty, and seeing if the other person felt that, in this case, it was an organization, like, did the other organization feel the same way we did? And in one case, they did. And in another case, they didn't. They really wanted to continue on. And so we just had to have a hard conversation where we said, this isn't working. So yeah, but it ended amicably. So
that's always good.
Yes.
Great. Right. Well, I want to thank everyone for joining us today, and I want to thank all of our panelists. Really interesting projects and great examples of partnerships and how we accomplish more together than we do on our own. So thank you all for being here today.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thanks so much. Bye.
Bye, everyone.